Welcome to the book of Exodus. Before we get into the book, we'd like to mention how the main theme of the book of Exodus, and then Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, is the law. The law comes with Moses. The chapter of the book of Genesis didn't really have a law per se. It did have commands and covenants, and the main covenant with the command was circumcision, and that was between Abraham and the followers of Abraham being born of the Spirit rather than being born of the flesh. And the circumcision of the flesh is a type of getting rid of the things of the flesh and having the things of the Spirit left behind. So basically, this is the only real law that was given to the people and that weren't Jews to the people that were with Abraham or to Abraham. I believe it's still valid today, being born of the Spirit and being circumcised. I'm not going to push that issue and think that you have to have that or you have to do that, but I would think that this would be very valid. So Genesis we went through already years ago, but we're going to begin here with Exodus, go through to end of the Kings, and the main theme here, again, with the law, we have to see about this law and relate it to the time of Jesus, I believe. And Jesus mentions in Matthew 5:17, he said, "You should not think that I came to depose the law or the prophets. I came not to depose, but to fulfill." So what law was Jesus referring to? The law, it doesn't say right there, but then in later in Matthew 8:4, Jesus tells the cleansed leper to go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift offering Moses assigned for a testimony to them. Well, here Jesus mentions Moses, but he doesn't use the word law, but the gift offering and what was prescribed was ordered by God, really not by Moses. Moses was just one person that transmitted it to the people. But in Luke 2:22, we see the words law and Moses combined, where it says, "And when the days were fulfilled of her cleansing," that was Mary, "according to the law of Moses." So here we have the tie-in of the law and Moses. It's nothing to do with any other period. But the law of Moses didn't arrive until it was first mentioned in Exodus 12:43. So we'll go through 11 chapters before we actually get into the law. Then the law was basically given and mentioned in the books of Exodus, Leviticus, and Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. But Deuteronomy, deutero means two or second, and nomos, law, the second law, is really a recount of the laws that were given in Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. We go through, we'll bring that out. I don't believe there was any new law in Deuteronomy. I might be wrong, but we'll find out when we go through there. Now, we also want to point out the correlation between these laws and the writings of the New Testament. Wherever a writing of the law appears in the New Testament, at the place that we're at in the Old, we'll point that out. And finally, the books of Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy are not only the law, but they are a history of from the birth of Moses unto the entrance into the promised land, and it's all scattered between the two. Hopefully at the end we'll have a graph where it'll separate those entities, the laws from the historical things that were going on. So now we'll get into the book of Exodus, and it says, "These are the names of the sons of Israel and that would be Jacob. That was his name, is changed into Israel at the end there, entering into Egypt together with Jacob. Jacob and Israel are the same. And their father. And each of them sojourning entered. And here are the names: Reuven, Simeon, Levi, Eudas, Issachar, Zavulon, Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asir. But Joseph was in Egypt. And all the souls coming forth from Jacob were 570. That's interesting. Here in the King James, if you go to 1:5, you'll see 70, no 5. And it comes from the Hebrew, and the Hebrew also has 70. But in the New Testament, Acts 7:14, the King James, the Apostolic Bible, has 75. So here, the 75 in the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament, agrees with the 75 mentioned in Acts 7:14. And it continues, and Joseph came to an end, and all his brothers and all that generation. All those people are gone. And the sons of Israel grew and multiplied and became extensive. And they grew strong, exceedingly, and the land multiplied of them. So now we give the beginning of the Jewish race growing. And another king rose up over Egypt, and he calls him Pharaoh down below here, who knew not Yosef. And he said to his ethne, we have ethnic, a nation, behold, the genos, a genus in the classification of plants and animals, the race of the sons of Israel. So basically, animals are classified in the genuses, and I suppose you can have the same with the classification of races of people that are humans. Behold, the genos of the sons of Israel are great in multitude and are strong above us, or over us. Come then, we should deal subtly with them, lest at any time they should multiply, and whenever a war may come to pass to us, these also will add to the opponents. And waging war against us, they shall go forth from out of the land. Well, I think the same argument for the Jews has gone on through the ages, down into the Nazi period of time, even before that in France. And I can't think of the name. It was a French officer who was Jewish and was accused of being like a traitor. And so the people of the Jews staying together for thousands of years is very important, very strong thing that they have, even though they don't follow a lot of the things of the law anymore. They don't have temples. They don't have any sacrifices. You would think that they would just intermingle with the people and be gone, like the Amalekites and the Jebusites and all these different peoples, but they haven't. They've stayed together, and what knits them together is interesting. It may not be spiritual. I've talked to many Jews who don't believe in anything in the Bible. They believe it's all a bunch of myths. But yet, they still stay together, stick together. Some people would probably use that term in the negative sense. And so therefore, some people look at with them with distrust, especially if they have dual citizenship in some countries, a citizen of Israel and a citizen of whatever other country. Those people in that country might not have trust that the Jews would actually be looking for their welfare, but would be looking for their own. So this argument has been going on for thousands of years. It's not unusual, but it began with Pharaoh of Egypt. And then verse 11, it says, and he, Pharaoh, set over them supervisors over the ergon works, ergonomics comes from that, that they might afflict them in their works. And they built fortified cities to Pharaoh, both Pithom and Ramesses and On, which is Heliopolis, Sun City. And these you can look up in Wikipedia and find out about them. This is the area that they were working in. Now, originally they went and there were shepherds, and I don't think when they were building it was a place for shepherds. From what I see, most of these places were pretty desolate. They were building the pyramids and the different tombs for the pharaohs. And insofar as they humbled them, the Egyptians humbled the Jews by so much, well, the Jews became more. And the Jews, were strong exceedingly, exceedingly. And the Egyptians were abhorred of the sons of Israel. That means the Egyptians abhorred the sons of Israel. Strange Greek structure there, but that's what it means. And the Egyptians tyrannized the sons of Israel by force. So they treated them harshly and got worse and worse over hundreds of years. And they grievously, I believe it's 400 years, and they grievously afflicted them by the life in the hard works, in the mortar, and in the making of bricks, and in all the works of the plains. Plinthia, plinth, comes from that. You can add that to your English derivatives book, 4141.1. And according to all the works which they were reducing them to slavery with force. And the king of the Egyptians said to the midwives of the Hebrews, to one of them with the name, when the King James says Shiphrah, but in the Greek it's Sephora, which is the same name in the Greek as Moses, the second wife of Moses, Sephora. But King James again changes all this around, makes it a mess out of it. And the name of the second wife was Fuah. And Pharaoh, he said to them, whenever you act as midwife for the Hebrews, and they should be about to bear, if then it should be a male, kill it. The males reproduced the race. Without the males, just the females, they would not have the race of the Jews, and they would just basically be taking on, I guess, the chromosomes of everybody else and not a Jew. Now, for the first generation, the person would still be half Jewish, but then after that, it would keep dwindling down to it would be less and less. And I'm not sure, I'm not a expert in chromosomes and how when the reproduction, how far along the child would take on more of the father's chromosomes or whatever that does. I'm not a scientist, but it would be interesting to know. But eventually, the Jews would no longer be around. I have a friend who is half Jewish, but his son is more Jewish than him. You'll ask me, well, how can that be? Well, my half Jewish friend married a 100% Jewish woman, and they had a child, and the son is 3/4 Jewish, where my friend is only half Jewish. So but anyway, here they're killing the males because of the reproducing the race. But if it's a female, preserve it, Pharaoh says. But the midwives feared God, and they did not do insofar as the king of Egypt ordered them, Pharaoh, and they brought forth alive the males. And the king of Egypt called the midwives, and he said to them, why is it that you did this thing and brought forth alive the males? And the midwives said to Pharaoh, well, not as the women of Egypt or the Hebrews, Evrei, for they give birth before the midwives enter to them, and they bear, and they're lying. The midwives are lying. And God did good to the midwives, and he multiplied the people, and it became strong exceedingly. So they kept growing and becoming stronger. Now, which Pharaoh this was, and there's another Pharaoh after, it doesn't say. Well, since the midwives feared God, they made to themselves families. So God blessed the midwives with families. Now, I'm not sure what prerequisite to be a midwife, if it was women that were interested if they're doing it for money, or if some of them were barren and they thought by helping bringing a child in, they would be doing something good. That's a possibility. And so then they became pregnant and had their own children and were blessed by God. And Pharaoh gave orders to all his people, saying, well, every male, whoever should be born to the Hebrews, toss into the river. That would be the Nile. And every female, bring it forth alive. Allow it to stay alive. Well, we'll find out how that goes and what happens and how Moses comes about to be, who is absolutely, obviously a male. So our second chapter in the book of Exodus, as we continue going in this book. Hope you'll join us. God bless.